Hello, it's Jimmy Mitchell. Welcome back to another episode of the Libertarian Uncensored podcast, where we look at all the posts on the Libertarian Uncensored subreddit, and let's get right into it here. First, we have Mike Pence might run for president, so supporters are launching a super PAC to fund it from NPR.org by her and I personally don't really care for Mike Pence. I think he's kind of too evangelical for me, I think. But I prefer him over Trump personally. I think Trump might be a little more libertarian, his policies might be a little more libertarian. But I would prefer him over Trump. But same with DeSantis. I think the policies of Trump might be a little more libertarian, but I'd still prefer the DeSantis because I'm just tired of Trump shit at this point. So yeah, let's. Then we have to compete with China on tech. America needs to fix its immigration system. Washington must make it easier to recruit and retain top talent. And that is from foreignaffairs.com, another one by Harumph. And I'd agree with it. I agree with that. The U.S. has historically been a destination for the brain drains of several countries, where they take the intellectuals of other countries and move them here. I think that's something we should look getting back into. Take the intellectuals and move them over here to hopefully stimulate our economy. Maybe some low skilled workers as well. I'm not too against low skilled workers either. Like a lot of our low skilled laborers are legal immigrants over here, and that's important to remember as well. So that's the thing we should look at as well. That's why I'm very big on immigration. The more people, more money, more products for everyone. So that's my thoughts on the issue. Bipartisan group calls for investigation into Commerce remarks about missing whistleblower. From thehill.com by Ninja Lover. And I don't really know I'm really even following this too much. So I don't really know what Commerce remarks were. Let's see. He said, not only is there probably your foul touts, no fuck they are now making behavior. I don't know if this is really impeachable, but I personally say, you know what, I'm always on the side of impeach all of them. That's why I think, they got Santos recently, so hopefully we can get the rest of them as well. That's my thoughts on the issue. So yeah, I personally don't think this is too bad by government standards, but if you don't think it's bad, you should be able to think so, and I think we should just get him out. We should just, if you want to use it as justification, you should be able to use it as justification, because I think we gotta get all these guys out of there, I would say. Then we have Rick Perry is thinking of running for president for a third time from TexasMonthly.com by Harumph. And yeah, we'll see what he will do there. I remember in 2012 he said, "Oh, we're going to get rid of the Department of Energy," and then he was named Secretary of Energy during the Trump administration. So see if he does that again. And yeah, I don't know if he's too much of a favorite. I remember back in 2012 he had the Strong ad that got a lot of shit. And I think he's probably one of the more conservative candidates in the GOP, and that's saying something. So I don't think he'll go too far, but we'll see how he does. Yeah. Finland's visionary fight against disinformation teaches citizens to question what they see online. Critical thinking, science-based understanding of the world around us is deemed authoritarian by religious fundamentalists from NationalObserver.com by Chi-Town20. And I said here, I've always said that people should be free to question what they feel, or they feel like another user says in the other comment, the state can't force people to think only certain narratives are true. They have to come to that conclusion for themselves. And I said there's a good comment on the initial thread. Just because you agree with the government does not automatically make you correct. That's the thing. It's you're not allowed to disagree. You're kind of forced to obey under this scenario through I would say kind of an indoctrination. It might be the facts might all be correct, but if you're pushed to obey them and kind of forced to obey them, does that necessarily make them correct? We need to have people think for themselves. That's why I've always been open about. We need people to think for themselves, and I think that is something we should really be focusing on right now, instead of forcing people to agree with us 24/7. We need people to think for themselves and note that it's okay to disagree, and that's important to remember. Then we have a ride of boot girls, 2 women challenging Atlanta's parking enforcement industry from NPR.org by Harumph. Yeah, so apparently they just go around, unlock metal brackets, attempting to vote vehicles parked on private property, like one Jaguar on May 5th, where I think, if people want to, yeah, I think private industry in this case, if they want to stand up to government, they should be able to. I think, if they're able to, they should stand up to government. So yeah, I'm always stand up to your government, stand up to those who you think are oppressing you, and yeah, I support this. Yeah, I say I support this. So next we have intrusion at National Security Advisor's home under investigation from Washington Post by Ninja Lover. That looks interesting. Might be a false flag, but we'll see how that goes. And yeah. Hopefully if it's not a false flag, hopefully they get the guy to justice. Yeah. And if it is a false flag, hopefully they get him justice too. But you're never gonna get the government to do justice. Yes, let's see. Salman Rushdie warns free expression under threat in rare public address after attack from NBCDFW.com by Harumph. And I'd agree with that. He mainly focused on how they're banning books. I personally think that's a bit. They're not really just taking out of the schools. So when they have some questionable content in them. But yeah, that's what got talked about. Road Doll and how he didn't like those changes because Road Doll didn't say it. He liked it. So yeah, I think that's important too. I think censorship online is currently worse than it is for books, but I definitely agree with Rushdie that free expression is under threat, definitely from both sides of the aisle currently, and I definitely think it's gonna come more under threat as time goes on. You're slowly getting like things like the social credit system and CBDC in there. Yeah. Next we have Planned Parenthood joins the groups calling for Biden and the Dems to expand impact the Supreme Court from MSNBC.com by Indie IT Guy. And I don't think we should expand the Supreme Court because it's just gonna keep stacking it for each administration. I would say, and then you might end up with like 2 million people on it. So I don't know if we should do that. But then again, I guess the government will justify whatever it justifies. I personally think we should abolish the Supreme Court. I think the Supreme Court's can be inherently biased, and that's important to remember. So that's why I don't think we should even have it. So that's my thoughts on the issue. Yeah. Next we have let's see. Follow the Science by Ruin My Circle Jerk, and it's the meme of the one guy, the NPC, saying right wingers are so dumb they ignore the science on unimportant issues like climate change and vaccines, and the NPC has r/libertarian uncensored written over him. I like that. And then the non-NPC goes, should we follow science and implement school choice? And then the NPC makes the scale. I like that. I always love the NPC meme. It's one of my favorites. And yeah, I'd agree with that. The thing with the people is they say the science, but what they mean is what I believe the science is. They don't care what the science is marketed to them as. They don't care what science actually is. If you label anything as science, you have to remember that what's labeled science might not be true. If we look at science from 100 years ago, it's a lot of stuff is completely different than what we have now. People used to think lobotomies were help people, and now we know better. So let's see, maybe 100 years from now, maybe it'll be different. We'll have to see. That's my thoughts there. Then we have, are we doomed hopelessly or hopelessly doomed by Screams Into the Void, average of 600 mass void on Twitter. Alex Couliard looks like his ad is average of 600 mass shootings a year happen over 4-year span. No way to fix this frowny face. Trans people exist. 64 anti-trans bills passed. 376 currently active. And this is kind of their agenda post. This is more of an agenda post. So yeah, but I think the thing is that there are a lot of gun laws passed up in New York and New Jersey, but you don't hear them talk about those because it's all they have an agenda, and it's important to remember that. I personally think what the anti-trans bill is like. Maybe we should have reasonable ages for gender affirming care. And I personally I think that's good, I personally think you could make an argument for gender affirming care for trans youth as part of a don't put my morals on other people. I personally would disagree with that because I think they should just have to wait till they're 18, like they do for voting and like getting tattoos and stuff like that. Because I do think children should have rights, but I do think you do have to draw a line at some point. You can't just say, oh, children consent to sex. That's my thoughts on that issue. Yeah. Next is Miller Lite is the new target of beer backlash from powerful JRE on YouTube. And yeah. I said, yeah, so the Miller Lite has a new ad. They're taking all the old content that the beer companies used to objectify women, like all of them in bikinis, and saying, oh, we're gonna compost that and turn it into beer. And I think, the thing is, it's just like, oh, woman oppressed, we need to support women. This isn't organic. They just do all this for their ESG scores, and that's what they use it for. And I don't really care for it. I think the free market, personally, as I said, the one guy said, "Oh, you just admit you hate free market." It's just never hierarchy. But sadly, those things are inevitable. But sadly, also ESG is pushed by the UN, U.S. government, so I think that kind of goes against the free market aspect as well. So, yeah, that's important to remember as well, I would say. Yeah. Next we have Spot That Troll. Spot the Troll. It's a game from spottroll.org. I posted that. It's a game I played a few years ago, spotting trolls. I said I found it on r/games years back. For people who could probably use this. My only complaint about it is that I just like that this and most other accounts of trolling, though frame is merely the fear of foreign governments. I think plenty of domestic institutions probably have troll forms as well, and I especially look at the DNC and the RNC there because I think they probably have very big troll farms that will probably get exposed sometime in the future. I don't know. Depends how much they can keep under wraps. Then we have another Republican calling for an end to democracy in elections by Whittling Dan. And that is a tweet from No Lie of Brian Tyler Cohen. He says, holy shit, Senator Tommy Tuberville, our Alabama, just said Americans should demand the end of democracy. The American people should just stand up and say enough is enough. Let's don't have elections anymore. And I personally don't care for elections. I would agree with that. I think maybe that they'll have a more oligarchy like they have currently, but I don't think it could get too much worse than it is currently, I would say, but we'll see. It always does manage to get worse, so we'll look at that. Yeah. I said I don't really care for democracy because I hate other people telling me what to do and making rules for me, and that's what democracy is. And that's why I really don't care for democracy. That's why, I think if people want to willingly participate in democracy, they should be able to, but I don't think they should be forced to do so. That's my thing on the issue. Because right now, you're essentially forced to do so because you're forced to interact with governments. That's why I think, we should have multiple governments, and if you want to interact with any of them, you should be able to, but you shouldn't be forced to interact with any of them. That's my fault on the issue. Then we have exclusive. Last year, Texas Children's Hospital announced it was stopping gender-affirming care on minors, but I've obtained internal records indicating that TCH secretary secretly restarted its child sex exchange program 3 days later and has continued it en masse ever since, by Chris Rufo on Twitter. And I said, the thing here is, it's pretty easy to deal with quite a bit as long as you stay out of the spotlight. I personally am against gender affirming care, but if people want to do it in secret, I personally would still be against it, but you can keep it under the table. That's why I think generally a lot of people should be doing more so these days. They need to do things more so in secret, not in the open, because the law can only see what's in the open, and I really don't think that. I think that's important to remember. Just don't try and put that out in the open, and yeah, just it's like all these anti-trans bills are being passed. How are they going to enforce that? Are you just gonna It's a lot of people, I know they're transgender. It's just like these people are like, it's like they're going out on the street yelling, "I'm transgender" at the top of my lungs, because they want attention, and that's why they're so scared of the bills, because they just want to bring attention to themselves constantly and want to be seen as victims. That's kind of the internet for you. It's all victim mentality, and that's important to remember. And yeah, we'll see how that turns out though. And I also noted that on this post, what constitutes freedom may differ from person to person. I don't think people should rape kids and that kids can't consent to sex, but you could argue stuff like that making murder illegal goes against freedom as well. The thing is, ultimately, what is legal and what is illegal is ultimately all defined by force, and that's why, whoever controls force controls people. Like what happened to Anne Frank, completely legal. The Nazis controlled force and they said it was legal, so, that doesn't mean what is legal is essentially moral. Those are two separate things. So, I personally have my own morals. I personally don't think kids can consent to a lot of stuff. I think adults can consent to a lot of stuff, more so, but we'll see how that goes. Yeah, like I personally don't think you should eat over people, but if it's consensual, I think that's not moral, but I think it should be legal. If you got what I'm saying there. Strong Parenting by Trent Steele on Twitter, and I posted that. And it's a link to a 4chan green text. Daughter says she's trans, 9th grade. What did WTF do? .jpg. Confess I'm trans too. She's confused. Dad, you don't know you're not. Stop being a bigot, Charlotte. Let's do this together. Wear dress and makeup next morning. Daughter is angry, telling me to stop faking. No, I'm trans, honey. Now get in the car and let's go to school. She's horrified. Has to be dropped off a block away. Nope, walk her in. Wave to front desk. She's fuming. Wife can't stop laughing. Pick up daughter in skirt and heels. Shitty makeup, glitter on cheeks. Skip your to her and her friends. Dad, stop. It's not funny. Demand to use my pronouns. Call her a bigot. Next morning, she's done with the whole trans thing. Begs me to stop. Is being trans now just the 90s version of golf? Definitely not cool if your parents do it. Lean into it and shame them out of it. I'd agree with that, The thing is, I think a lot of trans people or LGBTQ people, they might be legitimately LGBTQ, but I definitely think it's definitely trendy now, and that's important to remember. The thing is, I don't think sexuality in any portion is a fad. More so the desire to stand out and get attention by any means necessary using it. That's what I think is generally the fad here, and I think that's important to note. If we can cover catastrophic bank failures, we can cover catastrophic health costs. Health is Liberty from Slate.com by Chi-Town20. And I usually don't agree with Chi-Town too much, but you have a good point here. I personally don't think we should be covering the bank failures. I think we should be letting them fail. And I think, sadly, the same thing for health. I think we don't have the right to the resources of another person. I think if a government wants to have universal health care, it should be able to, but I don't think people should be forced to pay for it if they don't want to. That's my thoughts on the issue. Remember, we're all in the same boat by Motherfucking Inc., and that is private jet sales likely to reach highest ever level this year. Report says global fleet has more than doubled in 2 decades. More private flights made last year than ever before. And the one guy in the meme says, "Sorry for the automation for from our luxury jets." And then the other guy says, "Don't forget the climate change is your fault." And the other guy says, "At least plastic straws are banned." So yeah, I definitely think a lot of the climate change conferences, they're all people who go for using private jets. So that's important to remember. It's climate change. I think is more of a grift than anything else. It's the world's ending. The world's been ending for what 20, 30, 40 years now. You just can't. People eventually going to get fatigued from the world's ending constantly. It's important to remember that. And yeah, we'll see how that turns out. I personally think it's more of a grift though than anything else currently. Then we have suspect complies and surrenders, and police beat him anyway. All while body and cruiser cameras record from a Reddit video, and that is Motherfucking Inc. And I agree with that. The cops, they can beat you up for any reason if you comply completely. That's why I think the thing is you just can't trust them. That's why you just gotta try and avoid them. I think whenever possible. That's why I generally think of a lot of people. A lot of people they can turn on you in any second. That's why I think in some ways you should try and avoid people whenever possible. Because you can't trust those guys. Like cops especially, but anyone who's in 40 figure, I would say. So, but yeah, so the thing is, you should look into just leaving people alone, and hopefully, if you want to interact with them, you should be able to interact with them, but you shouldn't be force yourself on anyone else, and that's what I think the cops kind of do, and that's why really I'm critical of them. So next we have Argentina raises interest rate to 97% as it struggles to tackle inflation from CNN Business by Motherfucking Inc. And we talked about that in the last episode. And I said, oh, Argentina is so crazy right now and with its economy that they might actually get a libertarian's president. So yeah, it looks like that is going to continue. Then we have fire statement on Florida's expansion of the Stop Woke Act. That is the free speech thing that's new, the new ACLU, because now the ACLU is pretty much all left-wing only speech. But yeah, I definitely think fire is a bit better. They support free speech, and I definitely think the Stop Woke Act does go against it. Yeah, I would agree with that. Russia bombs Ukraine. That was my Skull Whisperer, by the way, that last post. Next, we have Russia bombs Ukrainian depleted uranium supply after Ukraine received it from the UK, from Newsweek.com by your state officer. And yeah, I definitely think Russia shouldn't be doing that, but I don't think there should be a war at all. I think we should just let everyone go home and to have peace talks. Yeah, that's my false issue. The U.S. definitely is involved in here too, because it's kind of all a grift for NATO, I would say. The Democratic Party exposed itself as anti-worker long ago. Oh, wait, no, you skipped one. U.S. and UK military plan on declaring Russian paramilitary Wagner Group a terrorist organization from PressTV.ir. And by your state officer, I'd agree with that. The Wagner, I think, the state can declare whatever it wants to be a terrorist group, but I personally think the Wagners as a paramilitary, I personally would lean towards agreeing with that, yeah. So we'll see how that goes. Then we have the Democratic Party exposed itself as anti-worker long ago. Now it's trying to hold on to power using radical front groups by Rainer Shea at Substack.com. By your state officer, I agree with that. The Democratic Party just cares about power, nothing else. Same with the Republican Party, and that's important to remember. They're all grifters, and they don't really care about anything. They don't care about workers. They don't care about LGBTQ. They don't care about anything. They just use them for votes, and that's important to remember. Next, we have Do You Know About Chiquita? Another one from your state officer. That's a Reddit video about, about Chiquita. And one guy says, and the other guy says, the banana company Chiquita, I think they're pretty corrupt, yeah. Once it was called United Fruit Company, I think it oversaw a coup in Hawaii, yeah. It had large plantations in Guatemala, yeah, and it overthrew the Guatemalan government, too. Spelling the government for proper dictators. It's called Banana Republic, yeah. I always thought that was funny. Yeah, and then the U.S. had planned the coup there in 51. People say, oh, this is getting times are so bad right now. Man, this is from 70 plus years ago, and times were bad back then, too. The U.S. was saying, oh, we police the world. We can overthrow your government in any seconds. Like, they did the same thing with Iran in the early 50s, Henry Kissinger is about to be 100, but, even he was not involved with the government yet, so that's how bad it was. Bad things are, that's the thing. The U.S. government is corrupt, and it's important to remember that. Yeah. And it's been corrupt for quite a while now, at least since the end of the Second World War. Probably even the end of the First, maybe even before Wilson, I would say. Maybe even back to Washington, I would say. There's always been some level of corruption, I would say, yeah. Yeah, so let's see. Next we have McGull Standard by your state officer, and that's a picture of battleships, and it says the U.S. dollar isn't backed by anything, and it says the backing, and then the colon, and then it's the picture of the battleships. And I said, just because the government has force on its side doesn't justify any of what they do, and that you should be forced to use them as legitimate. You are also not forced to use the U.S. dollar at gunpoint inside of robberies currently, though if the Fed, when isn't it a robbery? That's what I said. Yeah. Then we have Chris Rufo whines about not being allowed to friend teachers, calls it CRT on Twitter.com by your state officer. This is a tweet from Chris Rufo, yeah. And, I guess, what you interpret as a threat might be different from person to person. It's important to remember that, and we'll see how that turns out in the long run. Yeah, I personally do think Chris Rufo is standing up for the people against the tyrannical left-wing education system, but we'll see how that goes, yeah. And we have, imagine living to 98 only to be shot and killed in your own home by a deranged teenager for some reason who was allowed to have a gun. That's from 50 Shades of Grey on Twitter. And I said, life's unfair, that's not a reason to take guns away from law-abiding citizens. Also, I like that the post implies that 18 is not old enough to have a gun, yet the same people who are fine with minors getting surgeries and hormones for gender-affirming care. And one guy said, why not both, let both be legal? I said, that's a fair point as well. I do think children should have as many rights as possible. I do think some stuff should be off limits, with like them consenting to sex. But I guess you could make the argument that sports my moral values and other people's IDK, whatever you want to think, I guess. Though, personally, I'll always be against it and think it should be under the law. So I guess, you could make the argument there. But I think we should have all people of age, we should be able to have guns, and, that's the thing. Anyone can snap at any second. That's the risk you take. Life is inherently dangerous. You can die at any second. You can, that's that's not, life's not fair, and that's important to remember, yeah, so we'll see how that goes, and yeah. So next we have Houston's only lesbian bar denied insurance for hosting drag shows by Cron.com, and that's by your state officer, and yeah, I'm surprised Houston only has one lesbian bar. It's just a pretty big city. But yeah, so yeah, I personally think if the insurance company wants to deny insurance, they should be able to. But I definitely think if I own the insurance company, I wouldn't deny insurance. So we'll see how that goes. Feinstein, unaware she hasn't been absent from Senate from BusinessInsider.com, and I'd agree with that. Feinstein is just posted by Doctor Who 07, and I just agree with that. Doctor Who is pretty much a vegetable at this point, even more so than Biden and Fetterman, and they're pretty vegetable-y too. So we'll see. I definitely think we should get her out, but then again, at this point, all these senators and representatives and all the government elected officials, they're not the ones really running the show. The unelected ones are, and I think that's one of the things I like about Feinstein is she clearly isn't the one running the show. That's what I do like about her there. Yeah. Next we have Florida Governor DeSantis to send over 1,000 state troopers and National Guard members to U.S.-Mexico border from NBCDFW.com, and that's by her And I said, this is why we need to pass Defend the Guard legislation. It's only for active combat currently, but I think you have a good argument to expand it to only dealing with issues within a state's borders. And yeah, I definitely wouldn't justify this. I think Florida's National Guard should be used for Florida and nothing else. So that's my thoughts on the issue. Then we have Trump's disregard for we've one. How do we do my fellow workers from Imgur.com? And that's motherfucking post. And it's rich people who are not so different, you and I and everyone else, and they look at net worth percentile in the U.S. and then the chart of another net worth versus percentile chart. Yeah, so the rich people definitely do have a lot of income. They can justify that and that, but I personally am more of a social capital and economic capital guy, so I really don't care too much. Keep as much money as you want, I would say. So that's my thoughts on the issue. Then we have Trump's disregard for the rule of law is at least as bad as Biden's from Reason.com by her and I said on the issue, I said, politicians don't care for the rule of law. How shocking. Sarcasm, that's the thing. They never did. No politician has really cared for the rule of law. Definitely since FDR, I would say. And, yeah, you kind of increasingly see that, So, yeah. Then we have Elon and CNBC doubles down on conspiracy nonsense about the Alan Shooter being a psyop created by Bellingcat, not a Nazi, despite police confirmation by Chi-Town. And I would say, I personally we'll see how that goes. I think people should be able to believe whatever they want. Elon had that controversial tweet where he compared Soros to Magneto recently, and I think he should be able to do that. I'm for free speech absolutes. I think he should be able to say whatever he wants. I personally don't think he's as free speech absolute as lets on, but I definitely think, we need to support free speech there, and that's important to remember. Then we have a tweet from myself. I'm not a pedo apologist. The point more so is that sometimes you do have to justify forcing your moral standards onto others, no matter how hard that is for you. And I tweeted that, and I posted that as well. And I said, I wish I didn't have to force any moral standards on anyone, but then murder, rape, and child porn will be entirely legal. It's important to remember that. And I personally think as long as it's consensual, I think it should be legal. Like, how disgusting it is. Like, I think if you want to eat someone else but it's consensual, I think it should be legal. But it's important to remember that, like a case like Armuas, like where it's consensual, I think that's still disgusting. It should be stigmatized. But it's important to remember that non-consensual murder, non-consensual rape, non-consensual child porn, that should all be illegal. I would say. And sometimes you do have to justify forcing your morals on other people, and that's sad how it is sometimes, and that's sad. I personally don't. I wish I don't have to do that at all, but sometimes you do have to justify that, and that is how it goes. Yes. Then we have Senator Tim Scott says the government should be bowing knee to the church from rightwingwatch.org by Kage blah blah blah. And I said a black Democrat from the same state says the same thing and no one cares because when a black Republican does it, people notice and scream Christo fascist. And yeah, it was Jim Clyburn, or is it Jim Clyburn? I think it's Clyburn, or I know it's Rep. Clyburn. He was like, last year, he was like, oh, staying in power is biblical to me, despite Pelosi's call for new generation. It's just, they really are a uniparty. They both have their relationship with, I want to enforce all their relationships with their religion and all that, I would say. Then we have, trans Montana politician Zoe Zephyr has said that she thinks Republicans are masking America's real issues by stirring up fear of a transgender boogeyman. Authoritarians don't want you to question their religious-based laws by from thepinknews.com by Chi-Town20. And I said, personally, I don't think anyone should be authoritarians don't want you questioning their narratives. You see that slightly more on the left and the right currently, if you ask me, but I do agree that's a problem on the right as well. And I think that's important to remember. You should always be able to question whatever you want to question. I think that's important. No matter how, if you want to question the moon landing or 9/11, you should be able to. And it doesn't matter how crazy you look, you should be able to question whatever the fuck you want. That's my thoughts on the issue. Then we have DeSantis signs law against trans care, don't say gay extension, and that's from Local 10. By Chi-Town, and then we have another one of those pretty much in the next one. Ron DeSantis signs law allowing trans kids to be taken from their families as they can now kidnap kids in Florida, and from NewRepublic.com by Kage blah blah blah. And I said, CP, Child Protective Services could always take kids away for whatever reason it wants to. They have government force on their side. So yeah, we'll see how that turns out, and yeah. Let's see. We'll see how that turns out. The government does have force on the side, so it doesn't matter what the law actually says. It matters how they're enforced, as I always like to say. Then we have San Francisco bakery scammed by city programs for spending $27,000 repairing vandalism from YouTube.com by your state officer. That's a video by what's the guy's name? Louis Rossman, and I definitely would agree there. The thing is that it's important to remember that a lot of the government programs can be scams, and it's important to remember that. So we'll see how that goes, and we'll see how that goes for the bakery, and hopefully they turn out okay. So we'll see how that all that turns out, and I think that's about it for tonight. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.